This is not the type of business that you can thrive, succeed, or do what I did or what you've done. If you don't have this genuine love, you would have to do it no matter whether you were making money or not.
Peace, what's going down? It's DJ Payne 1 for Beatstars.com. As you can see, it's a very accomplished producer on the other side of the line with me. His name is DJ Shok, and it's an honor to meet him. Appreciate you sitting down and jumping into this interview with me.
My pleasure, man. Thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Like I said, I'm definitely glad to meet you too, man. I watch your videos and stuff, and you know, I've been checking your stuff out, man. You're definitely an inspiration to me on the online scene, and I learned a lot from your videos and stuff too. So, thank you, man.
Thank you, man. That's an absolute honor. So, speaking of honors, you're 6 times platinum, 4 times gold, 2 Grammy nominations. Wow. Out of all of those accolades, what are some of your favorite songs? I
mean, of course, the biggest record I've ever done is "Slippin" by DMX, and it at the same time, besides it, excuse me, happening to be the biggest one. It was very meaningful because it was like my first major placement. It was the first record I did after I signed with Ruff Ryders. It came at like a really low point in my life where I had left a city job that I had, and I had it for about 5 years. And, you know, a lot of people are like, you shouldn't do that, this and that. So I basically got this really small advance of like $2,500. And I went to California from New York to work on X's album, and unbelievably, like literally, like I just maybe 2 days. I don't know if it was the first night I got there or the next night, we made "Slippin'," and it was incredible. Like, you know, it couldn't have turned out better. You know. So
let me pick on something you said, which is that you were signed to Ruff Ryders. I think that whole model of signing a producer to a label has changed a little bit. It's not as common anymore, I don't think. Is that your experience?
I think there's nothing that's the same now as the time I'm talking about. I mean, including that. I think there's some people still operating like on old models, but it's super rare. I think that's just my opinion from my research I've been doing, from just the work I've recently been doing, and how the landscape is changing. It's changed a lot, and I feel like it's exponentially changing. Like it's just the change is happening faster now. I feel like it's very different. You know,
signing a deal with Ruff Ryders, what did that really entail back then?
I mean, it was, first off, it wasn't the greatest deal. You know, before that I had an independent label, and I was kind of used to doing my own thing. But long story short, I ended up signing, and the deal wasn't great. I mean, that $2,500 was for half of my publishing, producer royalties. You know, they were involved in that, and to be 100% truthful, you know, like to this day, there's a lot of royalties I still haven't been paid, and I'm actually there's like a lawsuit that's going on right now still, you know, to collect a lot of that money, because what ended up happening was when you do a deal like that, the danger of it, because even I knew what I was signing. I went to a lawyer. I understood it, and I knew it wasn't the greatest deal. But like I really believed, like I signed like right when, like before X dropped his first album, like I was in negotiations, and like I really believed in what they were doing as far as musically, and I wanted to just be a part of it. So, you know, even though it wasn't the greatest deal, I still did it, and I knew, you know, the money part wasn't the greatest, but what ended up happening was, even so that it wasn't so great, they would collect money and not pass it to me. So like, let's say $100 comes in, you collect it, and you're supposed to give me, let's say, 70. You just keep the whole 100, and you don't pass it on. And that's what happened on a lot of the music I did during that time.
Yeah, I think that's the risk with signing to anybody who's responsible for collecting on your behalf, because you're always putting a third party in between you and your money. But onto a more positive element of that situation. I mean, you've been cemented into hip hop history because of a lot of records that you produced, but as you said, notably DMX's Slippin'. And it was such a different record for DMX. It's my favorite DMX record, and it touched a lot of people. What does it mean to you to have produced undeniably classic records for hip-hop music and hip-hop culture as a whole?
It's a weird thing because on one hand, like, it makes you feel good, of course, and proud. And I mean, that was my dream. I started making beats when I was 15, probably, with a Kawai drum machine. I'm 44, so that's going back a long ways. And it was a huge dream of mine. So I was able to accomplish it, It's a double-edged sword because on one hand, these great accomplishments, I'm blessed to have, like you said, I have a part in hip-hop history. But at the same time, because, it's like I also have a music business story to go with it. So it's like this like paradox of like this great thing and then this not so great thing, But that's why I still, the love of music and despite all those different things and the ups and downs, I'm still making music because it's something I can't stop doing. And when I stop doing it, the rest of my life kind of goes nuts. So it's, I'm sure like everybody listening to this who's on Beatstars making beats can probably relate to that, So it's like, it's an addiction, man. It's a love. It's an addiction. It's a passion. And whatever the landscape is, I'm just trying to figure out my place in it,
So speaking of stories, I read that when you got the beat for Slippin' placed with DMX, it was already 4 years old, and it wasn't a beat that you thought was going to get placed. And I just interviewed DJ Green Lantern, and his biggest placement was for a Ludacris record, and it was a beat that he was about to delete. So when you produced Slippin', you were also apparently on the verge of kind of giving up on pursuing production. Through all of those trials you faced, what kept you going? It was the addiction to music, or it was something else? It
was a drive to succeed, but honestly, it's the love of music. I don't think, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, that this is not the type of business that you can thrive, succeed, or do what I did or what you've done or what a lot of other producers do, if you don't have this genuine love. Like if everything crashed tomorrow and you wouldn't, and if you had free time, you didn't get up and make a beat anyway, you probably wouldn't be able to do it because there's tons of setbacks, a lot of unfairness. I mean, dude, I could, if you want, I can give you like a really crazy story. I have a ton of them, but and I'm sure you've heard a million, but just crazy things happen, and it's like you have to like rise above it. You have to like, sometimes you're in a situation and you have to like hold your tongue, because if you speak on what's going on at that moment, you'll lose your placement. Because it's such a crazy environment, and everyone has a friend. Even back, like now it's more saturated, but even back when I was heavy in it, even back then, the A&R had two really good friends who made beats. There's always this tension of like different things that are trying to happen that get in the way of like the pure creativity and connection that you might have with an artist, because you can sit down, you can connect with an artist, you can play something, and be like, damn, that's crazy, Shok, and they can start writing, but there's this whole layer on top of them that can get involved at any moment and change that whole situation instantly. That's the reality of the business. And if that, I know people that something like that happens once, and their taste for the game is done. So you have to really, really love it. Like you would have to do it. Simply put, without being too wordy, you would have to do it no matter whether you were making money or not. You would want to make music.
It's okay. Here's something that people get hung up on a lot, in terms of the financial aspect of production, which is sampling. Obviously, you like sampling. I love sampling. What, in your opinion, is the role of sampling in hip hop culture?
It comes from the DJ, like being a DJ first, and just it's like can't help yourself. Sometimes you hear this dope loop and you just know you have to do something. And so the role it plays, business wise, can be terrible. I mean, I've lost singles. There was a record that I always regretted. It was a Chic and Little Mo record. It was supposed to be on Double R compilation volume 3. Supposed to be the single. I chopped up the sample. I had it on there. I thought I chopped it up enough. And anyway, long story short, it ended up not getting on there because they couldn't clear it at the end. And that was like, damn, man. And it was a great record. So it hurt Chic because he was starting to break out on his own. And it hurt me because it would have been another notch, another notch under my belt, another good record. So sampling is a double-edged sword. Sampling is like, that's why, like, one of the and it's a different company, than Beatstars, is Tracklib. And I've been working with them a lot because I like the fact that I can, for very cheap, I go on there, I pick up beats, samples. They have enough, and I mean, a lot of my sampling, I feel like I can manipulate things. So even if the library is limited to, I like the fact that for very cheap, without having to clear and go through all kinds of hassles, and that excites me because it's my natural flow of making music. I learned to do things without samples because Ruff Ryders was one of the first East Coast like sounds that almost didn't want you to sample. They would discourage sampling, so they would I would have hot tracks, and once in a while they would be like, yeah, but that's a sample. So they wanted more publishing, they wanted more, to generate more income. So they kind of made me do more without samples. Because even in my independent days, I did some stuff without samples, but it was just like, it would just kind of happen, and it was dope. And I was like, oh, this is dope. It doesn't have a sample, but whatever. So I don't know if that kind of, what role does it play? I mean, is it something that I would say, like, if you don't sample, it's not real hip hop? I would never say something like that. And is it because, I mean, if you go back to the earliest hip hop, late 70s, to some of the first records, I mean, those were bands replaying stuff. So it's not like it was a sample. You couldn't even sample the way we sample today anyway, until later on when Akai started giving you longer samples, and before that you had very short, expensive samplers,
Do you know what reason the sample was rejected? The sample clearance request was rejected in the case of that Chic Loose record?
I think that a lot of it had to do with the lateness of the record. Like we that record kind of came and it came in. The compilation was almost done. That record came in, like me and Chic had done a lot of it in my studio, and then it came in, it got mixed like in a quick period, and they wanted to put out, they had a release date. So as soon as it got done, it got onto the sampler, and then I think the time didn't allow the label to feel secure, like we definitely can clear this. And I think that it just became an issue where they were like, you know what, let's just go with something else. We need to get this done. Because that happens, I mean, I don't know so much now, because you can just drop anything whenever you want now, and you can wait a week, but back then it was like, if you had a release date, there's money going, there's already ads going, there's stuff happening, and it was important, and also contractually, that was through Interscope, and they had a label deal, so they were required to do a certain amount of releases. So time is of the essence in those type of situations. So I'm gonna say that time probably had a lot to do with it.
Back to your resume, which is absolutely legendary. Obviously, we touched on this. The industry has changed a lot since the DMX album dropped. But you recently joined Beatstars to start licensing beats online to the public through a publicly available catalog. What made you make that decision to join?
Late last year, I would say in November, December, I made a website. I started putting some beats up, and I was doing exclusives only. at like $2.99, and because I was kind of like, like every producer, that before they go full on leasing and everything, I was a little sketchy on it. Didn't understand it 100%, and I was kind of like, let me try this, and that did pretty good. I was surprised like how well it did the end of last year, and then I started to think about the big marketplace of leasing and the lower price points. You can resell the beat, just all the stuff you guys talk about. And I said, you know what, I'm not taking anything away from myself. I can still sell an exclusive. I can still do other exclusives that I can put to the side, aside from the catalog for leasing. And I just thought it would be cool, to do that. And I didn't have like an ulterior motive, like that I thought something would happen from it, like specifically. I just thought, why not? Let me get into that marketplace. Let me put my stuff in there and see what happens and give it a shot.
You said that the music business is a lot different now than it was then. But with regards to the changes you've seen specifically for producers, what would you say is the biggest change?
I'm going to be brutally honest. I think it's the devaluing of the producer, across the board. I mean, I've been a little bit more involved like this year and been in some sessions and different things. And I'm noticing, like the engineer is getting paid. The person doing the video is getting some money. And the producer is getting to the point where he's expected to be kind of like the artist, like almost. I'm getting that vibe, and it's changing. And I don't know, like I'm sort of at I have a big question mark about where everything is right now. And one thing that I do know is that no matter what the changes are, like guys like you, for example, like the way you market yourself and the way that you have like all these different streams of revenue and different, and the stuff that you guys are teaching, I'm impressed by it because no matter where the market goes, because you've kind of opened up these pathways to people, it feels like the market can go left, right, but you guys will still be able to ride through it because you're building a foundation of people who you're helping and you're doing things for, and I think that with such a like rapidly changing business, I think that's totally key. Like I just from an observer standpoint, not saying that that's what I'm doing right now, but I'm mostly because I have a full-time job, and so I still do this, and I'm dad too. I got my boys, and so I'm spread a little bit more thin because I'm not 100%. But if I was 100%, that's the direction that I would probably be pushing, and it makes sense, But as far as am I bugging or like, as far as like where is it going, I feel like it's almost anybody's guess at this point. Like where exactly is it going? What do you think? I mean, I know I'm not interviewing you, but I'm just curious.
Things are shifting a little bit. I think producers have a little more influence, and I also think the fact that so many producers now have they've always had access, but more are learning about the access they have to all of these resources that they can use, and most importantly, they have access to potentially millions and hundreds of millions of artists out there or companies that want their production or want some type of production. So as you were saying earlier, there are newer revenue streams for musicians of all kinds, but especially producers opening up because of technology, because of the internet. So I think it is a little bit like the Wild Wild West, but I think when the dust clears, the producers who learn the landscape and prepared accordingly are going to be in a good position.
I feel that way too. But it is a little bit like, especially for someone like me, like where I'm just kind of like, I'm like November, December, January, February, I'm like 4 months. So I'm not kind of like a baby. So, for me, it's like, oh, damn, like I'm like, you just dropped me in here and I'm looking around. I'm like, wow, so this, so this, so this. And and like the vibe I was telling you is just kind of like, I'm just observing and kind of like seeing what's going on. but it goes two ways. You know, I believe, like just like you said, I agree with you. It goes two ways. I think it can be something that can push you even greater into a better situation, but you have to learn it and you have to like ride that wave that's happening.
And I think what's dope, and you tell me because this is your record, but I feel like a beat like Slippin', because it's a hip hop classic. It didn't have a sound that was tied to its era. I could hear that beat if it hadn't been used by DMX. I could hear that beat on the next J. Cole album.
I would say in a sense it's timeless because I'm not tied into exactly what's happening, although I'm always influenced by what's happening. It always makes its way into what I'm doing. Because even like Slippin', for example, like those drums are from Hydra by Grover Washington, which are the same drums that are on like How Many MCs. But one of the things I did with that record intentionally was I had originally done it off vinyl, and so it had a grittier sound. But I went and copped the CDs back then at Tower, and I was getting into like cleaning up my sound, because all my stuff was super gritty. So I was like, let me. I wanted that record in particular, the beat, to be a little more clean. And so I got the samples off CD, and I tried to keep it as clean. I mean, it still went through a 950. It still had that. So I think that might be also a part of what kind of puts it in that category, maybe, even though it had this influence, because the filtering,
yeah,
and then the unfiltering it. That's super boom bap, like 90s vibe, but
it came back.
But it's in a way, yeah, it's in a different kind of form, because that was. I mean, if there was anything I brought into the camp, it was that, because I had a very big underground influence, and I had my underground label, and they were pushing more into like the non, So I was if anybody was resisting it a little bit, it was probably me, but still going with it, kind of like how I said, it's still happening, still going with it, but still being influenced by what was happening,
Got it. So, with everything that we just said, which is a lot, what advice would you give an aspiring producer in this era? What would you tell them to focus on to actually build their career?
And I've been thinking about this because I feel like a new producer. I mean, because of the way my career has played itself out, and the way I've kind of disappeared a bit, and I'm sort of reemerging. It's a pretty dope idea, which I'm going to try and do, is to work with an artist. Do an album, like with an artist. Like, I think it's a pretty dope idea because I think it has multiple good things about it. It'll help you develop a sound. It'll help the artist develop something. It'll help develop a chemistry. And it will also be sort of a calling card for what you can do right now. Like for me, like what can I do right now? Not what I did 20 years ago. What can I do right now? And I think that is super helpful to the artist because it's a project, and it also brings, the group. I think that with all of this kind of uncertainty about how to monetize and I think while people are like, this is how I'm doing it, while I'm figuring out how to do that stuff and what's going to work for me, I think it'd be kind of dope to do a project. And I feel like for a brand new producer to be just as good, because while they're figuring out how they're going to sell tracks online, how they're going to open up their store, how they're on the side doing this project with an artist they think is dope. And it's also cool because it brings another element to artists, because it's one thing to just pick up beats, and rap on them. But I mean, I've experienced this in basically my whole career, going in the lab, like, daily with someone and like vibing and being like, yo, and then we could do this on that one, and it's pretty dope, man. It's what I love about making music, it's like it's dope, man. Like, you kind of lose a lot of it by just always, there's a dopeness to going online, picking up a track, writing something dope at that moment and being inspired, but let's not forget about that other kind of organic thing that happens, because it's fun. It's actually it's exciting. Like when you're building with someone and you like, and you all of a sudden start going in the right direction, the same direction, both of you, or all four of you, whatever it is. It's pretty cool, man. And I think that's something that, advice to new producers.
I did that early on, and it really taught me to be a producer in the sense of
That's another good one, yeah.
what a producer is really supposed to be doing with record production. I mean, there are people who produce beats, there are people who produce beats and records. I know you do both, and you're right. It's fun to make a beat. It's fun to make a song. Why not try both, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Okay, so speaking of beats, how do recording artists who want to hear your beats and license them, how do they find them?
SHOKBEATS, shockbeats.com. So I don't put the C in shock. And, I'm on Beatstars. I got a pro page on Beatstars. And on my page, my player is the Beatstars player. So I'm basically Beatstars down right now. So that's how to get tracks. And if there's an artist out there that thinks they're dope, like that's what I'm looking to do right now. I want to do a project with somebody. And, I'm already talking with one particular artist who I think is really dope. His name is Jug the Illest. And we're going to try and work on something together. And we've been talking about it. He's in Philly.
And how do people find you on social media?
On Instagram, DJ Shok Beats. And you know what happened? I don't know what happened to my Twitter, if it got hacked or something, but it got suspended. And they won't let me back in. I don't know what happened. So my Twitter is at Shok Beats. I don't know what's going to happen with that. And everything is basically Shok Beats, basically. Wherever you go, if you put in Shok Beats, SoundCloud, it's Shok Beats everywhere.